slap in the face, and there's work that needs to be done. And this is why we're organizing our community. So after being away from our community for so long, about a month ago, maybe 3 weeks to a month ago, we decided to go out into the community and did a social distance defund and build party. And so we did this in conjunction with Metcalf Park Community Bridges, and we had TINSA with resources on voting, and we gave people an opportunity to ask questions and talk to them about the police budget. So this creative art build you see here, we gave people an opportunity to actually say, here's these blocks, you show us where you want this money to go. And so people were able to say, oh, I want 100 million going over to the health department, I want 100 million going over here to the neighborhood. So actually allowing people to see how they can move this money, and actually hearing and having conversations with them about where they wanted money to go. It was a really exciting time to be out in the community with folks. So where does that take us now? We are currently in a cycle. Like I said, we just got done actually speaking to the mayor during a virtual public hearing at the end of September, where we got to virtually log on. He shared his budget. Dennis Yacarino from the city also was present and talking about the budget, along with the current finance and personnel chair, Michael Murphy, I believe it is. And so that has already happened. And I would say 90% of the people who were on, I think there were over 30 to 35 testimonies, people were asking for a divestment from the police. They were supporting Liberate MKE's campaign. They were saying that they didn't want police to get all the money they've been getting. And so it's now up to the alders and us to continue to pressure them to give us the type of budget that we want. Early October, there will be that joint public budget hearing that I told you that we attended last year. That it's actually going to be on October 6th. So that's really where we're doing like a call to action. If you see something wrong, you should speak up. I just showed you that graph. If that doesn't boil your blood and you live in Milwaukee and you're a taxpayer, I don't know what will. This is our money. So we'll be going back virtually to talk before the joint public meeting. We'll be doing some more storytelling training, lobbying training to prepare our people for this continued fight. And then early November, the Common Council will amend the proposed budget and adopt a new budget. That's usually like the first week of November. So that's kind of our timeline for the rest of this work. We are excited. These were pictures from our defund party. We're excited to continue to do the work. The roundtable is visioning after this year to further expand our work. We want to hire another organizer who can do some individual base building. As a coalition leader, we have to depend and rely a lot of time on our coalition partners, which isn't always the easiest because everybody has their own set of issue-based work that they need to be doing. And so if we're not resourcing them because we don't have the funds, we're just saying, hey, join us, would you do it? And, really trying to push people to be a part of it. But we want to build our own individual base and members and create a political home for people. So that's really the direction that we're heading into. We are hoping to become a 501c3 very soon as well. It's time for Milwaukee to have its own Black-led organization doing this amazing civic engagement, year-round work, building up leaders and educating people around the work. This is not a sprint, this is a marathon, but we're excited to be a part of it. And I thank you so very much for your attention. And I'm gonna turn it back over to Martha.
Thank you so much, Marquesa. Awesome, awesome slides, awesome stories. And it sounds like a lifetime of work, but it's been in just few years. So I'm excited to see what the next few years and decades and a lifetime will look like. Amazing, amazing, amazing work. And I'm gonna turn it back over to Jack. I think he wanted to talk to us a little bit about tying the importance of the work that you have been doing on the ground to voting in the upcoming election. So Jack? You're on mute, Jack.
I like being on mute. Okay. Certainly, I'm Jack Murtaugh, for those of you who are not familiar with the organization, and Steve Watrous is the president, but he's sort of lost his voice today. But I've served on the board for many years. but I think the presentation was just excellent. We really are grateful for providing us understanding of what is meant by defund the police department. It was just a valuable contribution to our knowledge of the issue. And many of us would certainly like to be supportive. And I think there might be questions from those who are here listening that we'd like to ask of you. And probably I would begin with the.
We're going to do the Q&A first, Jack.
Do you have questions, Martha?
No, I was just going by Steve's agenda, and I apologize for, well, we're all kind of all over because we're trying to do what Steve is unable to do.
Yeah, so one Martha, questions from the group.
So yeah, so we're doing Q&A. Then I want to, and we're not talking voting yet, then I want to just say, I see you, Jerry. No. If you have questions or comments from the presentation, if you want to hold your hand up. I think all of us have video capability, as I can see, except for one person has joined us by phone. So if you would like to make comments so that we're not talking over each other, I want folks to raise their hands. You can use the reaction button on the bottom of your screen, or you can just put your hand up in the video. Make sure your camera's on first. I'm asking everyone at least 2 or 3 minutes and just due of time. I know Marquesa could possibly give her contact information in the chat or provide that to us. So you can follow up for comments, further questions, or how to get involved. So if you have questions, I'm creating a stack. I see Jerry, I see Annette, and then a couple minutes for each comment. And I see you also, Mr. George. If you, the old step up, step back. So you find yourself commenting a lot. I chat and comment a lot, allowing the space to step back at times and let others to be able to step up. So I'll try to get everyone. I try to get you even more than once, but just wanting to allow enough time for folks. So that's just a little reminders or ground rules as we move forward into the Q&A. And I'll start off with Jerry.
Marquesa, I want to thank you for a very thorough and insightful presentation today. It's excellent. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the field of mental health for over 50 years. And I know that within police circles, there's quite a debate about how to train police officers. Many programs are very top heavy on command and control, but there's a new method of training police officers focused on conflict de-escalation. In fact, many cities, Portland is an example, that they really have ride-alongs with people trained in conflict de-escalation, social workers primarily, helping police officers learn how to intervene without that old command and control philosophy. So my question is, what is your experience with the City of Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Police Department, and their commitment to train officers in conflict de-escalation and also bring in other professionals to help them learn how to de-escalate conflict?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks so much for asking. And so that committee that I was telling you all about, they're now called it was called the Collaborative Community Committee. Now they're called the Community Collaborative Committee. That is actually one of the asks that people had. They want to see different type of training. And so one of the things I remember that we put in as a committee was not only, do we want to see a different type of training, but we want to be a part of creating that training. Like, who's creating this training? Where are these trainers coming from? Are these like police officers from a different area, or people, what are they rooted in? Do they have racial justice lenses that they're looking through? And so I know that a part of that committee, I don't remember what tier of the reform work that's at, but I definitely know that people want to see some different type of trainings. I know that after Dauntre was murdered, there was some training that was supposed to take place, and like different levels of training happen for officers. But, we know that just looking at what happened during the protests and the uprising, that kind of stuff is not happening. So I'm a firm believer in, you can train somebody, but if your heart is in the wrong place, if you just got a messed up heart, if you are racist, that's what's going to come out. The training's not going to come out. it's what's inside of you that's going to come out. And so we saw peaceful protesters being tear gassed and pepper sprayed and, you know, being ran into, you know, and I'm certain these officers probably had some type of, you know, there's training. So they probably had that. But again, when you're working within a system that is rooted in slave catching, this is what happens. You know, if you haven't dismantled, uprooted the system that you're working in, these are the type of practices that are going to come out. When people's hearts are not in a place of service, they're not coming to work at the police department to serve. They're coming to bid what's in their heart. And that's unfortunately what we see way too many times, and people working in fear.
Thank you, Marquesa. Next on the stack I had was Annette and then George. So Miss Annette.
Thank you. Marquesa, and to your organizations, thank you so much for your work. And today for the detail. I mean, you're literally talking to the intelligentsia in our community. And we need to understand that, you know, and so the more we understand, the better that we all can work. But I want to take it to another level, and this is not critical. It's about how we say things. And, you know, I've worked in this area for a long time. And so, you know, through the peace movement and the climate movement, and here with Black Lives Matter and yay, Black Lives Matter, you know, we've learned through authors like George Lakey in terms of what we say. So in the climate movement, I'll try to be quick here. You know, it came out like, this is climate change. And scientifically and otherwise, that was a misnomer that hurt us in terms of the building the movement. It was really global warming, scientifically. And so as we talk about defund, and I see that, and I agree with that on the core end, but when we talk about broadening the education to other people, I like to think about it, and I write about it in terms of allowing the police to focus on criminals, literally. Because, you know, years ago, they did not deal with mental health. You know, drug and alcohol abuse wasn't that big an issue. So as we, and they weren't in our schools. So as we talk about changing things from the budget standpoint, you know, it's more like putting money in these other categories of human service that really, and I agree with you about reform, but really allow for a new going forward in terms of how we deal with the police and allowing them to deal with criminals. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. I have watched you in the community, you know, been in spaces and circles with you. So I appreciate your wisdom, your knowledge, all the work that you've done in our city, all the learnings, all of the things that you do. So thank you so much. And I agree, we need to broaden our education. You know, there's so many things that our community needs engaging and educating on. So I look forward to continue to create spaces for the roundtable to bring different issues based, you know, different issues there so that we can expand the awareness and also education for our people in the community.
Thank you, Mr. George, and thanks, Marquesa. I want to go back to Annette and her mother. I don't know if you all still had a comment or question. And then I'm also seeing some comments or questions in the chat. So feel free raising your hand and getting added onto the stack, or you can also put your questions in the chat box and we'll ask them to the group aloud. But Annette, did you have comments or a question?
I did. I just want to thank Marquesa. This has been, I think, one of the best meetings I feel we've ever had because it applies directly to the community, but also this is a systemic problem around the world. And so I'm the education chair for the UNA Greater Milwaukee, and we have a program in Milwaukee Public Schools called UNSIL, United Nations Schools for International Learning. And the children are learning, these are middle school, 4th through 8th graders, and they're learning about this, the goals, the sustainability goals, but they're doing things locally. And the 8th graders are doing public service announcements and public service, 7th graders are, 8th graders are doing public service. But I would like to be in touch with Marquesa about how we can connect. And I'm about education very much with adults, but I'm really more about education of children starting in kindergarten and nonviolence. And I see it in K-5 where I have just retired from teaching in MPS. But I would like to know and have some guidance from Marquesa about what you're doing with collaborating with teachers, educators for children. And I'll leave it there because of the time. But I'd like to be in touch with Marquesa, and thank you so much again.
Thank you, Annette. I work and support the Black Educators Caucus here in Milwaukee. It is a group of Black educators, and so they're working to get like the Black Lives Matter platform work into schools. So I know that there's Angela Harris, and I just put my contact information there, but I can definitely connect you with Angela Harris because I know that that is the work that they're looking to get into schools as well. Very important part.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. I believe a question that was in the chat was for Marquesa. How has the Milwaukee Mental Health Task Force been involved with your recent campaign work?
I don't know that they necessarily have. I'm not sure who's a part of that. Walter Lanier Jack may be a part of that. So he has definitely been a part of our campaign, not as active just because I know he has 10,001 things to do, but they have not necessarily been an active participant. But we know that there's always space to bring in other people and to also connect more people to our work.
So I think Ann, and that's, I apologize, Ann B, I don't want to mess your last name up, had her hand up and wanted to ask a question or make a comment.
Hi, thank you so much. This is really wonderful, Marquesa. I really appreciated your presentation. What I would like to hear or see perhaps is more detail on the use of the $50 million for public health and perhaps more of a breakdown on how that money is actually going to be allocated. And I think that what Liberate Milwaukee is doing is fantastic, but I really would like to see more detail. I'm wondering if that could be provided on perhaps your website or even in the conversation. Thank you so much.
Who is that, Ian?
Thank you, Ann. Yes, so that is an ongoing conversation that we're having in the community. You know, that money, what we would really like to see is participatory budgeting. Participatory budgeting allows for the community to sit at the tables and say, here's what we want allocated. Here's the pot of money. Here's how we want to allocate it. These are the programs. And so what we know and what we've learned in this work that moves so fast is that we don't necessarily have to have all the answers. But if we say that we want 50 million in public health, that can definitely go into the health department. Not to say that every single dollar we have accounted for, but we know that the health department, you know, we just saw Dr. Kowalik left, you know, and she was saying, you know, there were barriers for her to the work that she was doing, you know, that Black and Brown communities suffered the worst under COVID. We know that the resources are lacking. We know that there was hard, you know, it's hard for us to get testing on the north side, kits to St. Joe's, like all types of things. So we don't have it completely spelled out, but we're having conversations within our community to imagine and create these programs. You know, these budgets happen every year, but just because they happen and we don't have it all written out or don't have it all together doesn't mean that we can't divest and ask for that money though.
Thanks, Marquesa and Ann. I see a hand raised by Jonathan and Jacqueline. I have not missed you. I see your comments in the comment box, so I'll have you next. But can we hear from Jonathan right now?
Hello, I'm an honors freshman at the Milwaukee School of Engineering, and
and I wanted to thank you for putting on this presentation. I had a specific question. Over the other day, or some time ago, I heard the argument that while the issues that we face, the issues that we face today stem from the bad apple argument, basically. A few bad individuals are causing these issues, and not institutions as a whole, I believe is what I heard. What do you have to say in response to that argument? Do you
Yeah,
have any experience in that regard?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. And so what we know that, yeah, we know that there are good people within the police department. We do know that. We're not saying that all police are bad. What we're saying is, though, the system is. The system is bad. It's not good for us. It hasn't really, it's not a proactive system. And as far as the bad apples, what's bad is, though, the blue wall of silence that can make the good people not look so good when they sit and stand around officers like former officer Mattioli, and they watch him choke Joel Acevedo to death. That's the question that people have. How can you be a good officer and not be a bad apple if you are a part of the system and you're not speaking up? If you are a part of the system and you're not pulling Officer Mattioli off of Joel? If you're a part of the system and we see the videos with multiple officers, some standing by, some engaging in the tactics that are murdering people. So it's hard to say there's just a few bad apples when there isn't an uprising within the police department. There should be a straight up uprising happening in the police department. No, this is wrong. I see you, what you did. But no, that blue wall of silence, those pensions, keeps people quiet. That police union, constantly protecting all of the apples. So I don't necessarily, again, I know that there are good people with good hearts, but I don't expect, a few officers to come against like a whole system of policing, a whole police union. It's a lot of work, but somebody's got to do it. Someone has to speak up. Someone has to step out and be the voice for what they see is happening behind that blue wall of silence and bring it to the forefront.
I'm only going to take maybe
Martha?
one more. I know we have to cut it short.
One.
And I just wanted to acknowledge Jacqueline in the chat said, thank you for your important presentation. Do you have any suggestions as to how those who live outside of the city of Milwaukee can support you and others as you seek to redirect police funds?
Yeah, I sent a message back to Jacqueline. I'll just raise it up, is to continue to raise awareness around our work. We all know someone that lives in Milwaukee. Share the information, go on our Facebook page, the African American Civic Engagement Roundtable page, share our statuses, share information on our liberatemke.com website, and also continue to educate yourselves and others, and be a part of your own city budgets, your own town budgets. Figure out what's going on, civically in your own neighborhoods. We know that there's tons of work being done in Wauwatosa right now. I know there's been issues in Greenfield, with things happening. There's Shorewood. There's all types of budgets and things that can be happening in our own community. And also asking people to support our work financially, support our work again by sharing our information. There's a donate link on liberatemke.com's website as well. I've also left my contact information for people also. So just continue to engage others, share our information, and continue on in your own work.
Thank you. And if you are unable to catch some of the websites, some of those links, check out the chat box. We'll also forward that information after this meeting. I see your hand, George. I wanted to know if Dan still have a comment. Yeah. I know you're trying to cut me off, Jack. Did you still have a comment, Dan?
Yes, as a retired financial professional, the success of your organization to take the fear out of budgets is remarkable. It's even inspiring, frankly. And I also want to give you all kinds of kudos to keep at the budget, because that's where it all happens. My only additional comment is, I'd like to know more about the options of spending, not just one place, but options. Have those detailed out, and how do you bring the civic people and the other people in on that discussion, those options? Because I'm sure there's more than a few.
Honestly, thank you so much, Daniel. Honestly, I believe that our next step has to be participatory budgeting. You know, participatory budgeting brings people not just to listening sessions. No, actually, we are a part of the table of a conversation. Some people think, oh, you're doing the alderperson's work. Not necessarily doing the alderperson's work. We're working with alders on a greater level to have a greater voice and a greater impact in the budget. We don't want to just tell you, hey, this is where we want money to go. No, we want to say that we were fully engaged in that process and that it was transparent on how it happened. And I think that through participatory budgeting, we can sit down and have more of those conversations with, you know, this greater group of people and with the alders to talk about what those alternatives are. Because you're absolutely right. This alternatives conversation, it's a huge conversation of where we're going to direct monies, but we know neighborhoods need money. We know the health department needs money. We know communities need money. So it's just, what are those infrastructures that are set up to receive that money, and what are those programs to receive that money as well? But, you know, this is just the beginning. You know, to engage our people in this process is just the beginning. So we're learning so much, but so excited that this conversation and this work is happening, that we have more to build on and more to learn.
Thank you, Martha.
Yes,
We need
I
to
know.
bring some of this.
I promise this is it. This is it, because I have no more hands, no more notes in the chat. So, Mr. George, you go close us out. Just a couple minutes for your
Yeah,
question. Comment.
and thank you so much. And again, you know, I bow to the work that's being done. You know, as I lecture and talk, this is an important subject. And it's not that there's this bad apple in the barrel. If that bad apple has been able to survive, to thrive, to grow, and to connect with other bad apples in this barrel. We've got police gangs across this country with the same names, okay? But it's not only that. It's in this barrel are the district attorneys who do not prosecute police. They work with them to prosecute criminals, but are in a conflict of interest. And we've seen this in Milwaukee historically, where we never prosecute police. We leave it to have someone else do it, okay? And as district attorneys and state district attorneys, to have someone else do it, they put it off to the grand jury system so that their name isn't on it. But they control those systems that prosecute, you know, members of our community. And then ultimately, it's the judges. They're all in that same barrel. And we need to understand and educate ourselves to clean that barrel out, either through influence or elections. Thank you so much.
We need to bring some of this to a close.
Yep, that was a great
We
segue.
also
Thank
want,
you, Mr. George. That brought us right to the voting piece, Mr. Jack.
and a couple items. One is the fact that the United Nations Association Board has prepared a statement on racism and supporting the items that were raised in our presentation today. And but the board members need to sign off on it. Ordinarily, we'd have a membership meeting, but because of the pandemic, we can't do it. So a statement has gone out to all the board members from Steve, and we're asking board members to respond to that email, and do they support that statement? Secondly, we have developed programs for the next few months. And Annette, why not you share what's happening for October before we bring this to a close? Annette?
Thank you, Jack. I have the flyer, which is going to go out to the board and the membership. It just needs Steve's approval, but it's spotlight on the remarkable United Nations at 75 years, needed now more than ever. And it's on October 18th from 1 to 2:30. and you're going to need to register. So all the information about registration is on the flyer. And we have a keynote speaker who's been a businessman in Milwaukee, but a philanthropist, and has given a lot of time and energy and money to education, to educating our youth, high schools, and at UWM is given money towards the university for education. So we are glad to get this individual. He's a great human rights proponent, activist throughout the business community. And we're going to have a very good program. And that's what I have for now, unless anybody has questions about the program. You can join by Zoom or by your phone, but you're going to need to register. And if you need more information, that's on the flyer, which will be sent out by email, unless people request by snail mail. Mostly people who are, quite elderly might like that. Any questions?
Just a comment, and that also the information about future programs will be posted on the UNA of Greater Milwaukee website and Facebook page.
And thank you, Annette, for your team that's putting this together. It'll be an excellent program for October and the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. And in November, we'll be having our program after the elections. And so our November program will be focusing on the implications of the presidential elections for all of us. And in December, we'll be doing a program collaborating with the Equal Rights Commission of the city and the county for celebrating Human Rights Day. So information on each of those programs will be sent out later, but we're very grateful for the input of people about the kind of programs that we should be having and the speakers. And as Marcasa said today, it's so very important that we listen and that we contribute to empowering people. And so the presentation was a beautiful example of changes, developments taking place in our community that many of us were not aware of, and we're just grateful for what we heard. Are there any other observations that should be made beyond the statement on racism for the board, the programming that's coming up? And we also like to encourage all of you to vote and to encourage your network, your friends to vote. And there are MICA and other organizations, Common Ground, others are all involved in encouraging voter participation. So whatever each of us can do to encourage that participation and help people register, absentee ballots, however that issue works out, we're all encouraged to do that for this presidential elections.
Jack, could you also say something about the newsletter for the United Nations Association of Greater Milwaukee and how people can get access to that if they're not members?
Certainly, we're very fortunate that we have been able to update our newsletter, so it's quite attractive. The newsletter is published generally every month. We've been working on it for this year, and it can be found on our webpage, United Nations Greater Milwaukee. And the webpage, the newsletter is such that you don't have to read the whole newsletter, but you can look at topics of interest to you that members of the community have written articles on. And you could select those articles that you would like to read. But again, the United Nations Association of Greater Milwaukee is a chapter of the United Nations Association of the United States. And so we're concerned about global issues and how the goals of the United Nations apply not just to underdeveloped countries, but applies to us, the United States. So what we've heard today is an example of some of the goals of the UN. So you can find it on our webpage. And I think it's correct, the United Nations Association of Greater Milwaukee. There's a correct way of getting on that webpage. Jerry?
Jack, I think if people on their search engine just typed in United Nations Association of Greater Milwaukee, that would provide a link to the webpage and the newsletter.
Thank you. Anything else before we come to a close? We really appreciate Martha handling all the zoning and arranging the program for us.
No problem.
It's not easy. It's not easy when we deem, all of us want to unmute ourselves, so it worked out very well.
Can I say
Thank you,
something?
Martha.
We have something coming up at Peace Action. We're going to be having a film on the International Day of United Nations International Day of Peace. And usually we do have something every year for Peace Action, and the UNA gets involved. So we'll be showing a movie. It's called We Are the Many, and it's being screened by World Beyond War. So we'll be tuning into this national screening of We Are the Many, 7 p.m. And I'll send out the Zoom link to everybody. Also, I don't know if anybody is interested, this is a little harder. There's a group of people going down to Kenosha from Building Unity on International Day of Peace. And we're going to meet at 10 a.m. at the Labor Council parking lot on 633 Hawley. We're going to go do a day of community service. Basically, a lot of it will be driving down there. We're going to leave at 10 a.m., meet at 2 churches at noon with 2 pastors, and have a little snack. Then we'll do community service for 3 hours, and then we're going to have soup and bread at the Emmanuel Church in Kenosha. So if people are able to come down and do community service, we invite you to join us. 10 a.m., Monday, September 21st.
Any other announcements? Again, thank you for joining us as we bring this to a close. We again appreciate Marcus's talk, and so thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Marquesa. Thank you.
Thanks, Marquesa.
Thank you,
Thanks for putting together, Martha.
Asa, thank you, Martha.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all.
Thank you. Bye.
It was great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Martha, excellent work. Thanks so much for doing that and saving my voice.
Oh, you're welcome. Let me stop the recording. Oh.